Donald Trump firstly appeared after the attempt and was nominated as a presidential candidate, and that he has officially announced his candidate for vice president, Senator James David Vance, who is against aid to Ukraine. And Joe Biden called them a threat to American democracy. This, as well as fakes from Russian agents, are discussed in our weekly recap. Bohdan, Opoka, Sofiya, Troshchuk, and as they say in the States, let's go. My ear will grow back bigger and stronger, Trump might have said at the Republican convention in Milwaukee. But as the New York Times noted, this time Trump was unusually emotional and vulnerable, lacking his typical mischievous smile, practiced scowl, or other familiar traits. Because this year it was just a formality for Trump as the presumptive nominee of the party, because he had already received enough delegate votes in the previous election to be nominated. Trump, with a bandaged ear, raised his clenched fist, repeating the iconic gesture from the assassination attempt. As a result of the shooting, he suffered a slight injury to his ear, and the bullet passed only a few inches from his head. One person was killed, and 2 others were seriously injured. Donald's supporters immediately started shouting, "What is this, if not a sign from heaven? So why do we think of some Joe?" They launched a new fashion trend. Trump's speech became a central event both in the U.S. and abroad. This was followed especially closely in Ukraine, as Trump introduced his vice presidential candidate. The 39-year-old senator from Ohio, James David Vance, was elected. JD believed in these signals and changed his mind. A few years ago, he called Trump humiliating names. He opposes Russian invasions but doubts Kiev's victory. His recent loyalty and effectiveness influenced Trump's decision. Vance shares Trump's views on foreign, domestic, and economic policy. He also belongs to that group of Republicans in Congress. Vance considers it inappropriate for America to provide assistance to Ukraine in countering Russian aggression. But do not rush to be indignant. Give way to the elders. Joe Biden went out firstly since the attempt on Trump. The White House head told the TV company he still sees Trump as a threat to American democracy, but expressed regret over recent events. Immediately after Trump was shot during a rally in Pennsylvania, Biden addressed the nation and called for a lower political discussion. Later, during a conversation with Republican donors, Biden said the following: "I have only one task, to defeat Donald Trump. I am absolutely sure that I am the best candidate for this." And then Biden said that his mental capacity was fine and that he was worthy of the presidency. Well, who will stop this gentleman? 5 letters, Trump, no COVID, because Biden was diagnosed with coronavirus. The first symptoms were recorded at once. He had a runny nose, a cough, and was not feeling well. Biden himself confirmed the disease on his X page and said that he was feeling well. "I will be in isolation until I recover, and during that time, I will continue to work to do the job for the American people," he wrote. It would be fine, though. He will recover. Biden admitted that he might withdraw from the presidential election for health reasons amid speculation. "If I had any health problems, if doctors came to me and said you have this or that problem." Some major donors to the U.S. Democratic Party have reportedly frozen $90 million in donations, while Joe Biden refuses to withdraw his presidential candidacy. Some discussing how to convince him to go out from the race. During a meeting with Joe Biden last week, House and Senate leaders urged him not to jeopardize his party's congressional election chances. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi also joined the campaign to persuade Biden to withdraw from the presidential race.
Демократичній партії конгресвумен, колишня спікерка Палати представників Ненсі Пелосі, приєдналася до кампанії тиску, щоб умовити Байдена зійти з президентських виборів.
destroyed monuments and cemeteries, vandalized cars, arson attacks, and attempts. A network of Russian saboteurs operates in Europe and Baltics. And it is becoming more and more active. The agents recruited through Telegram are trying to disperse there. Unexpectedly, there are many Ukrainians among them. These are the results of the investigation shared by NGL. These saboteurs are in Poland and the Baltic states. The NGL tells the stories of those who agreed to work for the aggressor country and thus become part of the hybrid war that Russia has been waging against the West for years. For example, Maxim Leha, 22, moved from Poltava to Warsaw before the full-scale Russian invasion. In February 22, he was looking for a job and found an ad in a telegram. A year later, his girlfriend testified that he brought home cameras and SIM cards. He also traveled outside Warsaw and, with others, created a sabotage group planning to blow up a railway line. For transporting equipment from Europe to Ukraine. Another saboteur identified was Artur Melnik, a teenager from Chernihiv. In February 2022, his parents reported their son missing. Arthur will appear in Poland. Again, the ad in the Telegram and the agent network. Arthur brought 50 candidates to this company, in quotation marks, who were just like him. This subversive group alone has completed at least 500 missions. For example, first buying video cameras, bringing them to Warsaw, installing one of the cameras near the local airport, which at the time served as a transportation hub for Western military aid to Ukraine, and later finding this camera by law enforcement. Polish Interior Minister Mariusz Kaminski says Poland has charged 6 foreign nationals with preparing sabotage and espionage in Russia's favor. The minister said the 6 were foreigners from the eastern border, and they were trying to disrupt military and aid supplies to Ukraine. The prosecutor's office is preparing proceedings against 3 other detained people. Mr. Kaminski added that the cell was preparing sabotage actions in Poland, and evidence suggests that the group was monitoring railroad tracks, and their tasks included recognition and documenting the transportation of weapons to Ukraine, the minister said at a briefing. In December 2023, the Lublin court sentenced to 14 of the 16 defendants. Maxim Leha and Artema Verpa received the sentences of 6 years. According to Polish services, the network could have included more than non-identified 10 people. Another situation occurred in Latvia. One woman notices a man who has lost a note, and she picks it up. At first, he goes about his business, then remembers the note and reads it. The note will put the military intelligence and security service on notice. Why such a reaction? Because of the title. Mission Leelvard Military Airfield. The sheet contains precise instructions on what to photograph at the airfield and how to react if a failure occurs. On the back of the note, you can see a drawing of an airplane made by a child. The village of Rembody is just a few kilometers from the Lulud base, where military aircraft are stationed, as well as American Black Hawk helicopters used to monitor the airspace over the Baltic Sea. The Latvians came across a network of saboteurs organized by Russian services. It is important to prevent rather than overcome the consequences. Will Europe prevent Russian disinformation attacks? Only time will tell. Trends in TikTok are dangerous not only for our physical and mental health, but also for national security. The Center for Countering Disinformation reports a pro-Russian trend on social media. The CPJ reports a TikTok trend encouraging Ukrainians to travel abroad. Many posts feature videos of people, often taken from other social networks and captioned, about the unbearability of life in Ukraine because of war and power outages, with calls to leave home. The trend was launched by artificial accounts to evoke emotions and gain organic feedback and new videos. All the inconveniences are blamed on the Ukrainian authorities, not on Russia, which is waging a terrorist war against our country and destroying the energy. In this way, the enemy is trying to split the society. This is not the first time Russia has used the social network TikTok to achieve its strategic goals in the information war. In April, the enemy launched a campaign Evader. Videos from allegedly Ukrainian men who called themselves draft dodgers and boasted of a beautiful life were circulated on TikTok and other social networks. The pseudo-flash mob with the hashtag Evader is Ipso. This is a classic technology of splitting society, as the technology of splitting by language. Only in this case does the enemy incite hatred, leveling the constitutional duty, according to the CCD. The enemy's goal is to discredit the mobilization in order to undermine the country's ability to defend itself. And the Russians are really trying to speculate on difficult and painful topics for Ukrainians. They have entire networks of those who spread disinformation, inject it into the Ukrainian media space, and promote it. For example, speculations about power outages. We hear from Ukrenergo all the time. Important explanations about schedules and deficits, and it upsets us. And this is exactly what the Russians want, to turn our sadness into anger at the authorities. And then you see in social media posts other people, in TikTok's video or in comments and fakes this month, the sank. Against the backdrop of the critical situation in the energy system of Ukraine, the enemy continues to intensify information attacks aimed at discrediting the government, the Ministry of Energy reports.
На фоні критичної ситуації в енергетичній системі України ворог продовжує активізовувати інформаційні атаки, направлені на дискредитацію влади. Про це повідомляє Міненерго.
The invaders are amplifying hostile information about energy in Ukraine, with increased social media fakes from supposed experts, instead of developing additional distributed generation. Plans to fund nuclear unit completion may ultimately lead to nothing being built. The development of nuclear and distributed generation are parallel processes that do not affect each other. Increasing the capacity of distributed electricity generation is essential to meet the urgent needs of consumers. We really need distributed gas turbine and gas piston plants, green generation, and the government is constantly working on such quick solutions, while the development of nuclear generation will allow us to implement long-term projects that will ensure Ukraine's energy stability in the future. Such injections have intensified before the Verkhovna Rada is set to adopt a draft law on completing 2 units at Khmelnytska NPP. Russia claims the Energy Ministry is systematically discrediting the government's nuclear industry efforts. The enemy does not want us to develop nuclear energy and become a stronger energy power. Ukraine can complete one of the planned units, already 80% ready, in 2.5 to 3 years. If this unit had already been completed and connected to the power grid, the power supply restrictions would have been less severe or even non-existent. Nuclear power plants help maintain the power system and prevent blackouts. When nuclear units return from overhaul, outages become easier to manage. By occupying the Zaporizhzhia NPP, Russia was trying to destroy the system. Before the invasion, Ukraine had 15 nuclear units, with ZNPPs producing nearly half of the country's nuclear energy. Thanks to the efforts of the power engineers, the system remained stable, and Ukrainians had electricity according to the cutoff schedules. But it would still be there. Will there be a moral or at least some advice? Yes, a few. Check all information on social networks and teach children. Online work can sometimes lead to national security violations in a foreign country, and also to continue to support the defense forces and wait for next week to discuss the most important things. I'll see you soon.